Welcome to the Explainer. Have you ever thought about your brain not as this rigid machine that just generates reality out of thin air, but rather as a dynamic channel that simply tunes into it? Today, we're diving into this incredibly profound idea that our human biology isn't just a collection of mechanical hardware. Instead, we're going to look at how specific chemicals and glands act a lot like biological tuning forks. They literally pick up signals from our environment and use them to construct our entire lived experience. And that brings us to the central question of our whole journey today. Is the brain a machine, or is it a channel? For centuries, right, we've treated the human mind basically like a computer. We focus purely on inputs and mechanical outputs. But what if it's actually more like a highly advanced radio receiver? We're going to challenge that traditional mechanical view of the brain and start looking at its architecture as a living, breathing antenna. Because here's the thing, biology isn't just machinery. It is the physical translation of consciousness. The chemicals rushing through your veins right now, the tiny glands tucked deep inside your brain, they are literally translating matter into meaning. They take the raw physical world, stuff like light, stress, food, and they translate it into your subjective world of time, emotion, and self. So today, we're going to explore 3 specific biological tuners that do exactly this. Let's dive right into our first tuner, tuning time with the pineal gland. Right at the exact quiet center of your brain sits this tiny pine cone-shaped gland. The 17th century philosopher René Descartes famously called it the seat of the soul. And why did he say that? Well, because it's the only singular, unpaired structure deep in the brain, unlike our paired left and right hemispheres. Because of that, Descartes believed it was the exact hinge where the immaterial mind actually met the physical machinery of the body. And honestly, long before him, esoteric traditions in India and Egypt revered this exact spot as the literal third eye, the organ of spiritual sight. So, how does modern science explain this so-called third eye? Well, it's through a fascinating process called entrainment. This is the synchronization of the human organism to the cosmic clock via melatonin. You see, the pineal gland actually translates the photic language of light and dark. When the sun goes down, signals travel from your eyes to a master clock in your brain, which then instructs the pineal gland to release melatonin. It doesn't physically see the dark. It feels it. It's effectively taking the literal rotation of the earth and turning it into the biological rhythm of sleep. Now, we can't talk about the pineal gland without touching on a really captivating modern myth, the DMT hypothesis. Dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, is a wildly powerful psychedelic compound, and modern researchers have actually found traces of it in mammalian brains. What's even wilder is that it shares a direct molecular ancestry with melatonin. They're built from the exact same amino acid. But while it's super popular to think that the pineal gland just floods our brain with DMT during birth, death, or deep meditation to generate these mystical trips, the science tells us the concentrations are just way too low to prove that. Still, this hypothesis powerfully represents our deep biological hope that we are literally wired for transcendence. Ultimately, what you need to take away here is that the pineal gland doesn't invent rhythm, it receives it. It's a biological tuner that listens to the cosmic signal of darkness and answers back with a chemical whisper. It completely aligns our internal frequencies with the greater field of nature. All right, moving on to number 2, tuning balance, looking at anandamide and THC. We are shifting from a single, centralized gland to an ancient, sprawling network built for deep, systemic balance. Ask yourself this: what if your body already spoke the language of cannabis? It sounds crazy, but it's a stunning scientific realization. Back in the early 1990s, scientists figured out that long before the cannabis plant was ever cultivated by humans, our bodies were already producing their own internal cannabinoids. Nature literally engineered a molecular language inside our neurons that speaks the exact same dialect as the flowers of the cannabis plant. Enter our body's homemade version, anandamide. The name is actually taken from the Sanskrit word for joy, so it's widely known as the body's natural bliss molecule. But it's not about giving you this overwhelming sense of ecstasy. It actually acts as a really subtle, short-lived messenger for homeostasis, which just means dynamic balance. It gets produced on demand exactly when and where it's needed, to help us recover from stress, lower inflammation, and, this is huge, even help us intentionally forget traumatic memories so that we can actually heal. And when we contrast anandamide with THC, a really stark difference emerges. They both turn the exact same microscopic lock in our brain, the CB1 receptor.
But anandamide is like a local, fleeting whisper. It does its precise little job and then vanishes, broken down by enzymes super quickly. THC, the psychoactive compound in cannabis, on the other hand, it is a lingering, blunt megaphone. It completely ignores the rules of moderation. It floods your system, just saturating receptors everywhere all at once.
Now, those receptors are part of the vast endocannabinoid system, which regulates just about everything. We're talking mood, sleep, appetite, pain, immune function, and memory. It's incredibly unique because it actually operates retroactively. It reaches backwards across your brain synapses to adjust the volume of incoming signals. So it doesn't yell, it hums, and its entire goal is just to maintain a resilient, healthy balance across your entire physiology. Now, how well this system is tuned is what scientists call its tone. High endocannabinoid tone means you get faster recovery, deep resilience, and lower inflammation. Your body is basically acting like a perfectly tuned shock absorber. But if you have low endocannabinoid tone, the system struggles, and that leads to conditions like anxiety, chronic pain, or PTSD. And honestly, this brilliantly explains why a megaphone like THC can be incredibly healing for someone whose system is running low and needs a massive boost, but totally destabilizing and anxiety-inducing for someone whose system is already running high. It's all about your personal, internal, biological tuning.
Okay, let's hit our third tuner, tuning the self with serotonin.
You have undoubtedly heard of serotonin as the famous happiness chemical, right? But its true identity is way more foundational to who you actually are. And get ready for a paradigm shift because look at this data. 95% of your serotonin is located in your gut. Only a tiny, tiny fraction, 5%, is actually up in your brain. This incredible gut-brain connection reveals that serotonin isn't just some emotion molecule floating around in your head. It's a chemical of profound integration. It is constantly communicating via the vagus nerve, tying your digestion, your microbiome, and your bodily inflammation directly to your mental state. Your literal sense of self is quite literally being co-authored by your gut.
So when we actually look at that 5% operating up in your brain, we realize serotonin isn't a happiness chemical at all. It is a context architect. It doesn't just force joy like a simple on switch. Instead, think of it like a dimmer switch or a mood lighting for your consciousness. It completely adjusts your sensitivity to the world, gating how intensely you feel things, how you process stress, and how you frame your reality. It's the condition for your experience, not the experience itself.
In one specific receptor in this whole serotonin family is exceptionally fascinating, the 5-HT2A receptor. This is the exact cellular gateway targeted by classic psychedelics like LSD and psilocybin. When it's activated in that specific way, it creates what scientists actually call an entropic brain state. Distinct networks in the brain start talking to each other, and the default mode network, which is essentially the narrator of your ego, temporarily dissolves. This is wild because it proves that the serotonin system holds the biological keys to both our rigid, stable identity and our capacity for complete, boundary-dissolving plasticity.
Ultimately, serotonin shapes the very architecture of your experience. It completely modulates your emotional framing, meaning whether you see pain as just a passing moment or a permanent state. It dictates your sense of time, making it slow down or fragment. It tunes your social sensitivity to the people around you, and ultimately, it establishes the very boundaries of yourself. It acts as the structural frame that holds together everything you call your identity.
Which brings us to part 4, the biology of being. Let's synthesize all of this. Over the course of this explainer, we've journeyed all the way from single molecules to the deep meaning of how we construct our daily reality. Just think about our 3 tuners for a second. We have the pineal gland utilizing melatonin to translate the cosmic light of the world into our biological perception of time. We've got the sprawling endocannabinoid system using anandamide to translate environmental and physical stress into deep internal balance. And we have the serotonin system, translating physiological signals from both the gut and the brain into the context of our overarching identity. Together, working in harmony, these 3 dynamic systems seamlessly construct the reality you are experiencing right at this very second. The ultimate takeaway here is truly profound. Your biology is not opposed to your spirituality. It is its vessel. For so long, we've separated those 2 things, right? But the science and the symbolism are just 2 different languages describing the exact same luminous field of human experience. Your neurochemistry is literally the physical translation of your consciousness. Which leaves us with a really provocative thought to reflect on as we wrap up. If your brain is just the receiver, what frequency are you tuning into?
By understanding these incredible biological tuners, we realize we actually have the power to influence our own dials. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning and keep tuning in.